My journey took a heart-wrenching turn when I learned the hard truth about thinking before acting. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. I stood on the edge of the world, my heart pounding, breath shallow. The sky bled red and orange as the sun dipped below the horizon. It was beautiful, yet deadly. In that moment of silence, I felt the weight of my choices crushing me. I wanted to scream, to collapse under the pressure, but I kept it all inside. My hands shook. I couldn't trust myself anymore. That was the evening when I discovered secrets that should have remained buried. My family was all I had. Mom worried, Dad was distant. They fought behind closed doors, their whispers like cold daggers slicing through my heart. I saw the cracks forming, yet couldn't do a thing to prevent it. Friends were no better. They laughed at my expense, their betrayal feeding the darkness creeping in. The pain was suffocating, ghost-like memories clinging to my skin like unwanted shadows. Then, there was Liam. Sweet, kind Liam. He brought light on my darkest days. We shared dreams, kisses that tasted like hope. I believed in our future. But doubt festered in my mind, growing like a weed that choked the life around it. What would happen if I pushed him away? If I let my fears consume us both? One fateful night, it all spiraled. A single decision, impulsively made, shattered everything. I remember the way my heart sank when I heard the shattering glass. The shrieks of surprise followed by silence. The look on Liam's face when he realized I had miscalculated. My world tilted, flames swallowed our laughter whole. The reality hit me so hard it left bruises. Secrets spilled out like guts from a wound, staining everything in sight. I thought I knew trust, but betrayal twisted the knife deeper. The air turned thick, heavy with unseen turmoil. I wanted answers, but the truth was elusive, slipping through my fingers like smoke. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the empty space. My breath caught in my throat, heart racing. What was happening? Was it too late to change? I knew I'd have to confront the aftermath of my chaotic choices. With the weight of my decisions pressing down harder, I felt a strange flicker of hope, barely visible under the flood of regret. Would I find the strength to fix it all? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The sun rose the next day, indifferent to my despair. I lay on my bed, staring at the cracks in the ceiling, wishing I could lose myself in those tiny fissures where the light struggled to break through. I felt broken, like the glass I had shattered irreparable. The weight of every choice I had made, every word exchanged that night, echoed loudly in the silence. The world outside moved on. I could hear my neighbors going about their morning routines, laughter mixing with the scent of fresh coffee in the air. But within these four walls, an uncomfortable stillness clung to me. Each tick of the clock sent pangs of regret through me, a reminder of every moment wasted in fear and doubt. After what felt like hours, I peeled myself off the bed. I had to face the inevitable. The damage done wouldn't magically fix itself. The walls of my house felt like a cage, but there was nowhere else to go. I stepped outside, the cool morning air gripping me. Maybe a walk would ease the heaviness in my chest. As I wandered through the neighborhood, I stumbled upon Mrs. Hargrove, the elderly woman who lived 2 doors down. She was outside tending to her garden, her frail hands carefully arranging vibrant flowers. Despite her age, there was a spark in her demeanor that brought a ghost of a smile to my face. She turned and waved, her eyes brightening as she noticed me. "Good morning, dear. You look like you've been through a storm. Come help me with these roses, will you?" Her voice was warm, wrapping around me like a comforting blanket. I hesitated, wanting to retreat into my solitude, but something in her eyes called to me. I nodded and approached, kneeling by the flower bed. For a moment, the fragrant blooms distracted me from my turmoil. As we pruned and arranged, she spoke of life, reminding me of moments past, simple joys, hard losses, and the power of resilience. There are all kinds of storms, dear, she said gently, her hands working steadily. Some we can weather, others leave marks, but we always find a way through, don't we? Her words struck a chord deep within me, a reminder that pain could foster growth. I felt hope flickering once more, timid but alive. Maybe this single small act of kindness was the sign I had been searching for, a nudge toward healing. After spending the morning with her, I returned home, feeling a little lighter. I still had to face Liam, the fallout of my decisions hung heavy ahead, but somehow, the sense of connection I forged with Mrs. Hargrove infused me with courage. As I entered my room once more, the silence felt less oppressive. I thought back to Liam's face, the heartbreak in his eyes, and steeled myself for what I knew I had to do. I pulled out my phone, preparing to send a message, my fingers trembling over the screen. Before I could hit send, a flipping sensation in my gut froze the moment. I heard a disturbance outside. Voices raised in anger, familiar voices. I rushed to the window, my heart racing. Through the curtain gaps, I could see my parents in the driveway, their faces flushed with fury, eyes wild with emotion. It was more than just arguing, it felt like a confrontation, a reckoning. My breath caught. This was not just their usual squabbling, it felt amplified, as if the walls they had built around their discontent had finally crumbled. I felt like a ghost in my own home, helpless to intervene, yet desperate for clarity, and then I remembered Liam last night, the building chaos, his hurt, the glass. A dark realization washed over me. What if they had found out? My heart thumped painfully against my ribs. They were on the precipice of a revelation that might change everything for us all. In a moment, I wrestled with the potential fallout of everything I had chosen to hide, palpitations fueling my fear. Should I confront this now? Should I let them spiral, knowing it could shatter the fragile hope I had just begun to clutch to my heart? Taking a breath, I didn't have much choice. Whatever was happening outside, I needed to know. I opened the door and stepped out, the door leading into uncertainty once more. In that instant, all fragmented pieces of my existence hung in the balance, waiting to fall or soar, crushed under the weight of what I might discover. The moment I stepped outside, the world I had meticulously built around me faltered, and the tapestry of my reality began to unravel. I could hear my mother's voice, rising above the rest, sharp and cutting like the thorns of the roses I had just left behind. My father interjected, his tone equally fierce, each syllable echoing a lack of understanding that felt all too familiar. "It's not just about you, Claire," my father shouted, frustration palpable in the air. "You have no idea what it's like for us." My mother's reply was muffled, but I could see the anguish rimming her eyes, the tight lines of worry etched around her mouth. I wanted to retreat, to bury myself in the semblance of peace I had found in Mrs. Hargrove's garden. Instead, instinct pulled my feet forward. As I approached, the sight of them ignited a tempest within me. What were they fighting about? What turmoil were they spilling in front of my home? "Mom! Dad!" I called out, my voice steady but laced with concern. They turned simultaneously, shock dawning on their faces as if they had forgotten they weren't alone in their tempest. "Claire," my mother said, her tone shifting, a wave of defensiveness crashing against the vulnerability in her eyes. "We were just what?" I shot back, anger surging through me. "Yelling at each other in the driveway? What's going on?" Silence stretched, a taut string that could snap at any moment. My heart raced as I waited for explanations, for some hint of comfort. Instead, my parents exchanged troubled glances, a wordless communication that felt more like a betrayal than a bond. Finally, my father spoke. "We received a call from your principal, Claire. They're worried about you, about your recent behavior." His words sent lead through my veins. The precise nature of their concerns hovered in the air, unspoken yet powerful. Leaving school, arriving home late, and your grades. They believe what? I interrupted, fearing where this might lead. That I'm spiraling out of control? My mother took a tentative step forward, her eyes pleading for understanding. We just want what's best for you. We'd rather know what's going on, rather you talk to us. The sincerity in her voice dug deep into the layers of hurt and frustration I had tucked away. I thought about Liam and the mess we had created together. How could I lay this on them, dragging them into my mistakes? I swallowed hard, finding my voice quaking. If you really want to know what's going on, then you need to listen. I can't keep pretending everything is fine. Their gazes locked onto mine, the urge to protect them tugging at the edges of my resolve. Regret and sadness swirled like shadows, and the truth hovered on my lips, ready to fire like an arrow. But just then, a sudden voice broke through the thick silence. Claire. It was Liam. My heart leapt, sending both anticipation and panic coursing through me. He appeared at the end of the driveway, his expression darkened with concern, as if somehow sensing the gravity of the moment. What are you doing here? I asked, relief flooding over me even as my heart sank at the thought of dragging him into this mess. Your dad called me, he replied, glancing between me and my parents warily. I wasn't sure if I should come, but Liam can hear this too then, my father said bluntly, crossing his arms, the previous concern fading into an apprehensive glare. I felt my heart race, caught in a maelstrom of grappling emotions as I realized I was standing at an alignment of fates. It was as if two worlds, my home life and the reality I had shared with Liam, were colliding in front of us. In that moment, I saw threads connecting us all: fear, love, hope. The weight of secrets threatened to crush me, yet I saw Liam take a step closer, his eyes locked onto mine, reassuring but filled with an urgency I couldn't ignore. Let's just talk, he said softly, letting the tension float. Everyone deserves to know. My breath caught. He was ready to dig into the chasms of pain and disappointment that scared me most. The air hung thick with unspoken words, and I was torn nervous about my parents knowing the full scope of my struggles and the darkness that had begun to engulf me, but also scared of losing the only slivers of hope I had. Claire, tell them, Liam urged gently, his steady gaze lending me strength. I opened my mouth, ready to spill out my truths about insecurities, shame, and that night with the glass, but then my mother's phone rang, slicing through the tension like a knife. She fumbled for it, her expression suddenly shifting to one of profound worry before her eyes widened. Oh no, she whispered, glancing to my father, who rushed to take the call. The amused surprise of confrontation morphed into heightened fear as I watched them, the world tilting dangerously on its axis. As Liam turned to face my parents, my heart hammered in anticipation, not of the truth I was about to confess but of what could unravel instead. I felt the fragile connection between us, a web woven with fear and yearning. And just as my father ended the call, a gnawing intuition whispered that nothing would ever be the same after today. Claire, there's something you need to know, my father began, but the tremor in his voice only deepened my dread. I had come outside seeking clarity, but with a shaky breath, I realized that today might just lead to more questions than answers. While I braced for the storm, I knew in my heart that I was standing on the brink of irreversible change. The moment my father's voice faltered, all the air seemed to evaporate from the driveway, replaced by an oppressive silence that enveloped us. Claire, there's something you need to know, he repeated, but it felt distorted, like I was hearing him from underwater. My mind raced with possibilities, each more frightening than the last. Dad, what is it? I urged, heart pounding. I could feel Liam beside me, a solid presence ready to anchor me, yet the dread was suffocating, weighing heavy on my chest. There's been an accident, he finally said, his voice breaking slightly. Your mother's sister, she was hit by a car. They're saying she's in critical condition. The news shot through me like shattered glass, slicing open wounds I didn't know I had. My breath caught, and for a moment, I could only stand frozen, the world blurring at the edges. My aunt, who had always been a bright light of warmth and laughter in our lives, now hung in the balance, suspended between realms I'd hoped we'd never confront. Mom? I breathed, glancing at my mother whose face had gone pale, her phone slipping from her fingers and tumbling to the pavement. The vibrancy of the moment fell away as if someone had pulled the color from our surroundings. Claire, she whispered, eyes shimmering with tears that threatened to spill. I can't believe this is happening. My own tears began to form, but I had to stay strong. I had to keep the broken pieces of myself from scattering. It struck me then how fragile life could be, how quickly everything could shift from normal to devastating. All the trivial dramas of teenage angst felt inconsequential against the backdrop of this crushing reality. Liam moved closer, intertwining his fingers with mine, grounding me amidst the turmoil. The warmth of his hand was a fleeting spark in a darkening sky, but I was grateful for it. I squeezed his fingers hard, finding a moment of solidarity as our eyes met his filled with concern and determination. My father was standing there, a figure of strength who had crumbled in a moment as he grasped that his own flesh and blood was enduring such pain. We need to go to the hospital, he finally said, the urgency in his voice anchoring the chaos swirling in my heart. A sudden wave of panic surged within me. What if she doesn't make it? The thought tumbled from my mouth, a raw, unfiltered response to the fear accumulating in my chest. She's a fighter, Claire, my mother said, gripping my shoulders. Tears cascaded down her cheeks, but there was a glimmer of resolve in her gaze. We need to believe that. We have to be there for her. She's always been there for us, always, I echoed, my voice trembling. Memories of my aunt flooded my mind, the summer barbecues, her laughter ringing through the air, teaching me how to bake cookies. It felt like I was losing parts of my childhood alongside her, fragments slipping away like sand through my fingers. But what about school? The words tumbled out of my mouth, seemingly trivial in comparison to everything else, but they hung there, heavy and unresolved. Liam's grip tightened around my hand. Forget school for now. This is more important. He was right, I knew that. Still, a pang of guilt and confusion settled in my stomach like a stone. I can't just abandon it, I mumbled, voice barely above a whisper. But the truth dug at me. Could anyone blame me for prioritizing family in a moment like this? The answer was murky, caught in the conflicting tides of adolescence and responsibility. Let's go, Claire, my father urged, his eyes reflecting pain and urgency entwined. There was no time for hesitation. I could almost hear the clock ticking, the countdown to a moment woven with uncertainty. As we piled into the car, the world blurred by through the window, life continuing as usual for everyone else. My heart beat wildly in my chest, each thump a reminder of the grief yet to come, the worries that spiraled like autumn leaves in a gust of wind. I looked at Liam beside me, and though he sat silently, the comforting warmth of his presence felt like a small globe of light in an ever-thickening shadow. Minutes slipped by as we drove toward the hospital, and with each second, I felt further drawn into a vortex of anticipation and despair. I couldn't shake the images of my aunt flickering through my mind, her smile brightening the darkest days. Arriving at the hospital, reality hit hard. The sterile smell of disinfectant filled the air, and I could hear the distant echoes of patient monitors beeping steadily, a hypnotic reminder of life and loss intertwined. We should wait here, my mother whispered as we approached the hospital entrance, her fingers entwined nervously in front of her. But I couldn't just wait. I needed to see her, to hold her hand, to prove to the universe that my love could still stand against the chaos of existence itself. And as if hearing my silent plea, Liam softly placed his hand on my back, guiding me forward. Let's go together, he said, as if sensing that I needed him now more than ever. And together, we crossed the threshold, stepping into the unknown. With every step towards the ICU, dread and hope collided within me. I could feel the weight of my parents' worry and unfathomable fear, but beneath it all was a spark of determination, the wish that human connection could triumph over even the hardest truths. And then, as I stood before those heavy double doors, my heart thundered at the prospect of facing the truths of life. There, within those sterile walls, awaited the potential for heartbreak but also the possibility of hope blooming from the ashes of despair. "Claire," my father said, breaking through the noise in my head, his face taut with anxiety. "We need to be ready for whatever happens." His words struck me anew as I turned to face my family. In this moment of uncertainty, I felt the gravity of the connections we held so tightly, family, love, and the fragility of life itself. And just then, I didn't know whether to remain hopeful or brace for a devastation that could reshape everything I knew. As the doors swung open, I felt the sharp breath of reality slicing through me, the chilling anticipation hanging thick in the air. What awaited us was a truth I could hardly fathom, teetering on the edge of my existence like an unanswered question. The imposing doors of the ICU swung open, revealing a stark corridor lined with flickering fluorescent lights. My heart raced in time with each mechanical beep echoing from within. I could feel every fiber of my being pulled taut, stretched between hope and despair. As we walked further into the sterile world of the hospital, I couldn't shake the feeling that time had become a cruel joke. Each moment spooled out, long and torturous, as if the universe reveled in stretching the agony of waiting. My mother held tightly to my father's arm, her knuckles white, her eyes darting around uncertainly, searching for any sign of promise amidst the chaos. My thoughts spiraled into a dark whirlpool of uncertainty. What if we were too late? What if I lost her, too? The crushing anxiety transformed into a bitter acid in my stomach. I swallowed hard, the taste of dread bitter on my tongue. With every step toward my aunt's room, an invisible weight pressed down on my chest. In the waiting area, small groups of families sat huddled together, faces drawn and strained, each one lost in their own labyrinth of grief and fear. I wanted to reach out, to offer some comfort, but the chasm of my own unease felt insurmountable. The sterile environment blurred, flashing images of life that felt impossibly distant. It was the moments before tragedy struck that haunted me today, and I found my own childhood memories intertwined with my aunt's laughter and song. "Claire, sit," Liam gently suggested, guiding me to an empty chair before my father moved forward to speak with a nurse at the desk. I sank into the seat, the unforgiving plastic cold against my back. "Do you want some water?" he asked, concern etched into his features. I shook my head, focusing instead on the flickering television screen in the corner where a daytime soap opera played on mute. I felt like a spectator in my own life, the images flowing past me like a distant river. I wanted to scream, to shatter the glassy silence that surrounded us. The very idea of my aunt trapped somewhere between life and death felt surreal, a nightmare I couldn't wake from. As my parents continued to exchange hushed whispers with the nurses, Liam stayed beside me, his hand finding mine again. He squeezed, steady and grounding, a small flicker of connection in a place that felt overwhelmingly isolating. For a fraction of a moment, I was grateful for his quiet presence amidst my tumultuous thoughts. "Where are we?" I heard a soft, hesitant voice cut through the silence, and I turned to see a young girl sitting across from us, her small hands nervously fidgeting with a bracelet on her wrist. She couldn't have been more than 8, their wide eyes searching. I noticed the frail woman beside her, whose face was like carved stone, resonating echoes of pain. "This is the ICU," I replied gently. "Are you waiting for someone too?" The girl nodded, her lip trembling. "My grandma," she whispered, casting a fleeting glance at the woman beside her, the fear evident in her small frame. There was something heartbreakingly familiar about that mixture of despair and hope reflected in her gaze. "I am sure she's strong," I said, my heart squeezing at the sight of the girl's fingers anxiously twisting the bracelet. "Just like your grandma." My words seemed to comfort her just a bit. "She always says she can beat anything." The girl's voice was barely a whisper, yet it carried such earnestness. A smile creased her face, and for a brief moment, our shared pain turned into a connection. Together, we were both waiting for our loved ones, caught in the shared agony of uncertainty. It was a fragile bond, woven from heartbreak, and it made my heart both ache and swell with unexpected warmth. Suddenly, the exuberant laughter of children echoed down the hallway, cutting through the dreariness, startling me. A family with a little boy about 5 years old, colorful balloons bouncing around, appeared at the corner, bursting into a waiting room where quiet agony had settled. The juxtaposition ignited something inside of me. They were a reminder that life and joy continued to fight against the shadows surrounding us. Maybe we can be as strong as them, I said to the girl, and she nodded without hesitation, her small spirit igniting something fierce in me. In that moment, I realized that even in awful times, hope could surface in the most unexpected form: small gestures, shared silences, even the bright colors in a balloon. Finally, my father returned, his face pale and lined with worry. The expression in his eyes told me all I needed to know. "They're still working on her," he said quietly, the unspoken fear swirling in the air around us. My mother joined us, her earlier strength faltering as she wiped her tears with the back of her hand. I wanted to envelop her in my arms and let her know we could bear the weight together, but just as she leaned into my father, the girl beside me let out a small gasp, drawing our attention. A doctor appeared in the corridor, brisk and purposeful, his white coat fluttering slightly as he made his way toward us. The air thickened, and a shadow fell over the waiting room as everyone turned to face him, heartbeats sinking in a crescendo of tension. "Can you tell us?" my father started, voice shaking at the edges, but the doctor raised a hand, his face set in an expression I knew all too well. "Your aunt." His voice faded away into a thick silence, leaving us hanging on the precipice of fear. My breath caught in my throat, and that's when I noticed the girl grip her bracelet tighter. We were all knit together in this moment, a web of fear and hope, clinging to anything we could as we faced the unknown together. And just like that, with the weight of a single weighted word dancing in the air, I was once again reminded that life could unravel in an instant and that we could still find strength in the fragility of our connections. As the doctor's words hung in the air, the room seemed to shrink around us. I could feel my heart thudding painfully in my chest, each beat a reminder of the dread that had been my constant companion since we entered this cold, sterile space. My mind raced, grasping for a breath of hope among the suffocating confusion. The doctor's lips moved, but all I heard was the deafening silence that followed. My father clenched my mother's shoulder, and I could see the tremor in her hand as she fought to mask her terror. I felt Liam's presence shift beside me, his fingers slipping away from mine, as both of us stared, frozen. "She's stable," the doctor finally added, his voice steady despite the fragility of our situation. "We've managed to control her bleeding, but it's too soon to determine the extent of her injuries. We need to monitor her closely." Relief, however tentative, flooded through me, but it was quickly overshadowed by a rush of renewed uncertainty. "Can I see her?" I blurted out, my throat dry, desperation threading its way through my words. "You'll need to wait a bit longer," he said, and I watched as the air deflated around us again. The young girl across from me averted her eyes, her fragile hope slowly withering, while the tumult of emotions surged within me, battling for control. The doctor left instructions for my father to follow, but my thoughts spun off into a cacophony of worry. I caught the girl's eye just as her grandmother leaned closer, whispering softly, "We're going to hope for the best, dear." The child nodded, but her lip trembled, and I couldn't help but wish I had the words to comfort her in the way she needed. Just as I began to sink deeper into despair, a small tip of faith sparked within me. I turned to Liam. "You know what I miss?" I whispered, emotions tightening my throat. "Those summers at the lake. Remember when Aunt Millie would teach us how to make s'mores?" Liam's eyes brightened at the memory, and a faint smile broke through the haze of anguish. "Yeah," he chuckled softly, "you burnt the marshmallow to a crisp like always." "That was part of my charm," I replied, my voice heavy with nostalgia. "She told me it was perfect just the way it was. In that moment, laughter bubbled between us, a small reprieve. We clung to fleeting memories, wrapping ourselves in laughter as if it were a life raft amidst the storm. I could see the flicker of a smile on the girl's face, another small victory over the oppressive gloom, but as quickly as joy had found us, it was ripped away by the sudden ringing of my phone. I jumped and gathered my breath as I glanced at the screen, my heart plummeting anew. It was my cousin. Our family had a history of checking out one another's well-being, but today felt different. "Excuse me," I murmured to Liam and slipped away to answer the call, my hands trembling as I swiped the screen. "Claire?" My cousin's voice trembled on the other end, drenched in urgency. "You need to come home. Something happened at the house." "What do you mean?" I felt the air rush from my lungs as cold fear washed over me again. It's Dad. She choked, the words strangled by grief. He didn't make it. The world tilted dangerously on its axis, thoughts colliding in a frenzied whirlpool of chaos. I couldn't breathe, the ground beneath me felt shifting, ready to crumble. What? Sunlight splintered through the windows, blinding and misplaced. All around me, the fluorescent lights flickered, shadows dancing like specters. I gripped the edge of a chair, terror surging through me. Are you sure? Claire, Mom's here too. We don't know what to do. As my cousin's voice drifted away, swallowed by my shock, I felt hot tears spring to my eyes, tears I had fought against for so long. The weight of loss, aching and profound, collided violently with the fragile relief we had just tasted in the waiting room. Claire? Liam's voice broke through, his hand on my shoulder anchoring me in the chaotic storm. This can't be happening, my voice cracked as I reiterated the news to him, disbelief twisting my gut into painful knots. No, there has to be a mistake, he insisted, his expression shifting from concern to determination. Let's go back, we can figure this out together, but in my heart, I knew this was a fracture I could not mend. Just as Aunt Millie lay fighting for her life, my family was fracturing in another realm. I could feel the threads of love and connection pulling taut, threatening to unravel with every word spoken. I can't handle this, Liam, I choked out, my voice raw and shaking like a wildflower in the wind. I turned back to face the room, my soul screaming silently, the weight of the world settling heavily on me. My eyes found the girl again, her small face illuminated by muted flickers of hope, innocence intact even in the face of darkness. Perhaps she didn't know the full depth of heartache yet, but here I was, drowning in it. Caught between the life I loved and the looming specter of loss. Please, I whispered to no one in particular, the words escaping like a prayer. What do I do now? And just as the thread of despair began to spin tighter, the doctor returned, his face more somber than before. Behind him, another nurse lingered, a look of unease settling in her features. Mr. And Mrs. Thompson, he began, the words heavy, and I steeled myself for yet another blow. There's been a complication. Everything inside me froze. I could barely breathe, fear gripping my chest as I clutched the chair's edge, bracing for what was to come. The slippery slope of uncertainty bore down on me, and I recognized that even through the light, shadows were creeping back, threatening to engulf what little hope remained. The doctor's voice droned on, a murmur in the background as my mind scrambled to make sense of the words filtering through the chaos. Complication. The very word exploded in my brain, ringing ominously. What more could possibly happen? Claire, Liam squeezed my shoulder tighter, a silent anchor amidst the swelling storm. I could see panic flaring in his eyes, his lips moving, but the urgency in the air drowned out all sound. I swallowed hard, an oppressive weight settling over my heart as I shifted my gaze back to the doctor. Your aunt has developed an infection, the doctor's voice finally broke through the fog. We need to take immediate action, but I didn't care. I couldn't hear the rational explanations anymore. I was teetering on the edge of something so deep, so vast, that I could no longer distinguish between my pain and the muted sorrow weaving itself through the walls of the hospital. All I knew was that I felt like I was walking through thick fog, every step a struggle against the dread that threatened to consume me. Okay, my words escaped in a strangled breath as I fought to steady myself, but disbelief punctured through my resolve. What does this mean? Will you be able to? I couldn't finish the question. The possibility of losing Aunt Millie felt too heavy to say out loud. Right now, we must act swiftly, he urged, his voice clinical but unwavering. I will call for the necessary medications and prepare the operating room. It's crucial that we act immediately to address this infection. Liam glanced back at me, his eyes reflecting the confusion and hopelessness swirling inside my chest. In that little exchange, I saw part of him shatter. The strength we had clung to just moments ago hung fragile, like a spider's web, threatening to unravel with the slightest breeze. I turned to look at the little girl again, clutching her grandmother's hand. She was watching me, her gaze searching, unknowingly pulling me back from the edge of my despair. We just have to believe in her, right? I whispered, almost more to myself than to her. However, no warmth bloomed in my chest at the thought anymore. Each passing moment felt heavier, lodged in my throat like an unspoken fear. I knew how fragile hope could be. I had just felt it evaporate like mist in the sun moments before. Could I dare to hope again? The doctor excused himself, fading into the hallway, leaving me in limbo with my emotions swirling like a hurricane. I needed to ground myself somehow, some way to keep from being swept away. "Liam," I said, my voice trembling, a small flame of determination sparking within. "We need to fight for her. She's our family." His hand found mine again, fingers intertwining firmly as he nodded, a rush of strength passing between us. "We will, Claire. We'll do everything we can." Just then, another nurse entered and glanced cautiously at us. "Do you need something? I can fetch you some water or something to help," she offered, her soft voice breaking through the tension. "Actually," I started, then hesitated. I didn't want to burden anyone else with the chaos swirling inside me. But the kindness in her voice struck a chord, and another small hint of hope began to unfurl deep within my chest. "Could you tell us more about what to expect?" For the first time in what felt like forever, I was seeking answers rather than drowning in doubt. The nurse nodded, and a calmness replaced the storm within me as she began to explain the situation in simple terms, making it more manageable. Words once again became the lifeline, anchoring my spiraling emotions. As I listened, I discovered that even through the shadows, there were details to consider, decisions to make, moments yet to share. Perhaps the fight for Aunt Millie's recovery could also illuminate the path forward for my family, even in a place now riddled with heartbreak. But just as I began to inhale the flickering light of resolve, a shout erupted from the hallway, shattering the fragile calm. "Stop! You can't go in there!" A voice echoed down the corridor, urgent, commanding. "What do you mean?" Another voice surged in response, tinged with anger. I have the right. Liam's grip on my hand tightened instinctively. Our eyes met, and without needing words, a silent understanding passed between us. Something was wrong, deeply wrong, and with it came an instinctual pull towards dread. With a shared urgency, we surged towards the sound, our feet hurrying down the sterile hallway until we caught sight of the commotion. A tall man, wild-eyed and frantic, was being restrained by two nurses just outside Aunt Millie's room. "Why can't I see her? She's my sister," he demanded, voice cracking with desperation. The sight of the chaos, the vulnerability displayed so raw, launched a jolt of unrecognizable fear straight through me. Who is that?" I whispered, my heart racing anew. "I don't know," Liam replied, his brow furrowed. As we drew closer, the man turned his gaze towards us, and suddenly, recognition flared in his eyes, a wild, haunting recognition. "Claire!" he yelled, the words spilling out as if it were the last piece to a puzzle I had yet to uncover. My blood ran cold as our eyes locked, a whole world of unspoken secrets residing within his chaotic expression. "Who are you?" I could barely force the words out, disbelief and confusion churning within me. The man's shadowy presence loomed closer, and for the first time, I felt the true breadth of the encroaching darkness threatening to consume everything I had fought for. My world, already precarious on the edge of heartbreak, now stood on the precipice of unspeakable revelation. "Claire, you don't understand. It's about your father." The hospital corridor felt eerily cold as time seemed to stall, every heartbeat echoing with the weight of unsaid revelations. The man's desperation hung thick in the air, coiling around us like a noxious fog. With each word he uttered, I felt the ground shift beneath me, the fragile structure of my understanding crumbling into dust. "What do you mean about my father?" I forced the question out, but it felt like a blade lodged in my throat. My heart pounded violently against my ribcage, each thud a mixture of fear and an instinctual urge to retreat. Liam's grip tightened further, a protective gesture that contrasted my spiraling thoughts. "Claire, listen to me." The man, haggard and frantic, inched closer despite the nurses holding him back. "It's important. You deserve to know the truth, about everything, about your father, about Millie." "Stop it. I nearly screamed, the word bursting forth with an intensity one hadn't meant to summon. The whispered chaos of the hallway descended into silence, curious eyes shifting cautiously between us, drawn to this sudden upheaval. Though I felt raw and exposed, an ember of frustration ignited within me. "You don't know anything about my family. My aunt is in danger, and you're some stranger yelling about things that don't concern you." He shook his head, anguish etched into the lines of his face. "No, Claire, you have every reason to want to know." His voice trembled, carried by desperation that made it impossible for me to ignore him entirely. "You can't possibly think that you're just a family photo. There's more, much more. You are tangled in this mess, and so is your aunt." Something shifted in the air, a shiver ran down my spine, and suddenly I was trapped in a war between disbelief and an unquenchable thirst for answers. Amidst my instincts to safeguard my heart, I could feel Liam's concern, his steady presence around me urging caution. "Who are you?" I demanded again, my voice wavering. "What do you know?" The man took a deep breath, composing himself momentarily as he eased back, the nurse's grip still holding him gently but firmly. "I'm Jonathan," he revealed, his voice lowering as though sharing a secret. "Your father's brother." The words hit me like a thunderclap, reverberating with a resonance that shattered the world I knew. "That's impossible. My father never spoke of any siblings. She had a different life, one he left behind." My heart raced, battling between the pull of family towards an unknown and the urge to dismiss this man as another harbinger of chaos. Jonathan's eyes mirrored my turmoil, the sincerity in them sending a ripple of doubt through my defenses. "He didn't talk about a lot of things, Claire. They hurt too much. But it's not just that, you have to understand Millie is trying to protect you. She always has." "What do you mean?" Frustration danced at the edges of my voice, feeling dizzy from the truths unfolding before me, intertwining threads of familiar stories now drawn into confusion. "Your father was involved in something dangerous, and it made Millie." He paused, his voice heavy with emotion. "It made her keep secrets. Secrets that might be resurfacing now." That I felt my breath catch, weighed down by the heaviness of what he was suggesting. "This is insane. You're saying my life has been shadowed by secrets I never knew?" Liam stepped closer, his presence solid and unwavering against the seeping chaos. "We can't just know." I shot back, cutting through his attempt to ground us. My heart raced with the intoxicating cocktail of fear and anger. "This doesn't change anything about my aunt. It doesn't change what's happening right now." Jonathan's gaze locked onto mine, a fierce determination glowing within the storm of confusion. "Maybe not now, but it will affect everything moving forward. You need to know who you are, what's been hidden, before it's too late." Just then, another voice rang out, a security guard, his stance imposing but kind. "Is everything all right here?" he demanded, glancing between us and the restrained Jonathan. The tension coiled in the air felt momentarily alleviated, but the questions in my heart only deepened. "No. It's not all right," Liam exclaimed, frustration bleeding into his words. "She needs to see her aunt, and this man needs to back off." Yet I found myself torn, pulled between Liam's anger and Jonathan's urgency, two opposing factions waging war within me. I couldn't fathom how something I thought was entirely solid could now be so dissolving. In the midst of the unfolding chaos, a sudden scream erupted from Aunt Millie's room, a sound so raw and desperate it sent icy fingers of dread clawing at my heart. "Claire! Liam! Help!" A slap of adrenaline coursed through me. I tore from the scene, a stitch of momentum drawing me towards that door, an inexplicable instinct roaring to life. Time folded and collapsed as I pushed through the entrance, gasping for breath. There, in the sterile light of the hospital room, Aunt Millie lay thrashing on the bed, her face contorted in pain. I felt Liam behind me, and Jonathan's presence loomed behind him, a suffocating sensation of panic and possibility. As I rushed to her side, I turned back to Jonathan with fierce resolve. "Whatever the truth is, it can wait. I need to save her now." In that moment, amidst all the unraveling threads, we were entangled in a desperate dance of love and fear, woven together by the uncertainty that enveloped us. But as I clutched Aunt Millie's hand, feeling the warmth slowly ebbing away, a chilling thought pierced through. With every breath, my loyalties seemingly split at the seams, leaving me isolated in the tempest of unanswered questions. Would I have to confront the truth about my family after all? The fluorescent lights cast a sterile glow over the room, illuminating Millie's pale face, clammy with sweat and fear. I squeezed her hand tighter, my heart hammering as I glanced around the room, searching for any sign of what was happening to her. Liam stepped closer, his presence a solid rock in the tide of chaos swirling inside me. "Claire, I think she's having a panic attack," he murmured, his eyes darting to the heart monitor whose rhythm had turned frantic. "We need to calm her down, make her breathe, Millie." "Aunt Millie," I called, desperation pouring from my voice as I brushed her hair away from her forehead. "Look at me. Breathe with me, okay? Just like we practiced when I was little." Her eyes flickered open, wide with terror, and for a fleeting moment, they met mine. But just as quickly, that spark dulled, overwhelmed by the tidal wave of distress crashing over her. "Don't leave me, Claire," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper, drenched in a fear I hadn't seen in her before. It's all coming back. Nothing is going to take me away from you," I assured her fiercely, feeling Liam's hand on my back, grounding me. Together, we began to inhale and exhale in unison. "Look at me, Millie. Focus on my voice. We're right here." I watched as a flicker of recognition passed through her eyes, and for just a moment, it seemed to quiet the storm in her mind. I felt Liam's hand tighten on my shoulder. He was with me, unwavering in our fight against the spiraling chaos. The door swung open suddenly, and a nurse hurried in, her expression shifting instantly from professional calm to concerned urgency. "What's going on in here?" she asked, taking in the scene with practiced precision. "Please, she's having a tough time," Liam replied, keeping his voice steady as he gestured toward the monitor, which beeped erratically, a sharp reminder of the gravity of the situation. "We can't lose her." The nurse rushed to Millie, assessing her quickly, and I held my breath as their movements blurred into a montage of voices and instructions that felt too far away. "We need to sedate her, keep her stable. Stay calm, everyone," she ordered, her tone clipped yet reassuring as she injected something into the four. "Millie, remember how you used to tell me stories about our family? It's all going to be okay. You just need to focus on me," I urged, trying to anchor her with the comfort of familiar words even as confusion gnawed at my insides. "Claire," she managed to whisper just as her eyes began to flutter closed. The tension in her body gradually eased, but a chill washed over me as I realized the potential depth of her condition. The fragility of her life hung precariously on a precipice. As the calm returned, a silence settled throughout the room, but it was tinged with the weight of unasked questions. I turned to Liam, struggling to process everything: the man outside, Jonathan, and the secrets that hovered over us like specters. "How did we let it get this far?" I whispered, the words rattling in my chest. "What if it's too late for Millie? What if—" "Stop it," he interjected, a reprimand laced with an undercurrent of concern. "This isn't your fault. You're here now, and that's what matters. Focus on Millie. We'll figure everything else out later." I nodded, though the darkness loomed ever closer, threatening to engulf us. The nurse continued monitoring Millie, her pace professional yet shielded by compassion. I could tell she cared deeply for her patients, but could she really know what Millie had endured? Suddenly, the door creaked open again, and instinctively, I turned as Jonathan slipped inside, his eyes wide and worried. "I just heard the commotion. Is she okay?" His voice wavered, holding a weight that felt burdensome in the pristine air. "Stay back," Liam warned, stepping between Jonathan and Millie as if ready to defend her all over again. "You don't belong here, not now." But Jonathan's gaze didn't waver. He looked at me, a flicker of urgency igniting within him. "You need to listen, Claire. I know connecting with what's happening right now seems impossible, but you have to understand your family's past is entwined with Millie's present." I opened my mouth to retort, to push him away, but something in his expression made me pause. Behind the fear and desperation was an inexplicable sorrow that echoed deep within me. Inside his haunted eyes, thresholds had been crossed. He was here, standing where so many shadows intersected. "Whatever it is you think you know can wait," I finally said, my voice trembling, plain in its resolve. "I won't allow more pain to come between us when she needs all of us right now." That he hesitated, the tension thickening the air, and for a moment, I truly believed the walls separating our realities might crack enough for understanding to seep through. But before we could bridge that gap, another alarm blared, piercing our fragile moment. The heart monitor's tempo increased, an urgent beeping that quickened my pulse like wildfire. "Claire!" Liam shouted, panic flooding his voice, and my heart plummeted. "What is happening?" I turned just as the nurse rushed back, panic visible across her face. "We're losing her." Everyone stepped back. Liam's hand gripped mine as we were pushed back out of the room, the rising clamor of voices mixing with mine as I fought against the encroaching dread. "Millie, please!" I cried, squeezing Liam's hand even tighter. "Stay with me." Just beyond the door, I caught a glimpse of Jonathan, his own face a mask of anguish and regret, swiftly turning away back into the shadows of the hallway that felt more like an abyss. How could I choose between family and the terrifying truth when my heart clung to the hope of saving the woman who'd given me everything, only to be enveloped by secrets that finally began to peel away? The question taunted me, a relentless echo of the collision between past and present. And as Millie's fading heartbeat drummed through my ears, a chilling realization struck me: the truth I needed might be the very thing that could irrevocably break us all apart. When the chaos began to swell, pulling me under like a turbulent tide, I felt the world around me noise down to an eerie stillness. The frantic beeping of machines faded into the background as I stood at the precipice of everything I had been fighting for. I was losing Aunt Millie, the woman who had wrapped me in warmth and wisdom, the guiding light in my life forged through every shared laughter and every silent tear. And yet, in this eye of the storm, I had half a mind to chase the truth that had stumbled into our lives. Jonathan, my father's brother, a man who potentially held answers to questions I hadn't even begun to think of. But as I stood at that threshold, fear pulsed through my veins heavier than ever. I was torn between two worlds: the chaotic reality of losing Aunt Millie and the tangled web of secrets that threatened to drown me in yet more grief. I had been seeking answers all along, but could I even withstand the weight they might carry? The door to her room closed sharply, a brief flicker of movement through the slit stealing air from my lungs. I felt my thoughts scramble, the distant echoes of confusion masked by the desperate ache of loss. My chest felt heavy as if the very air I breathed was laced with sadness. "Claire," a soft voice pulled me back, Liam's voice, while he tightened his grip around my hand. "We'll get through this. One way or another, we will fight for her. For your aunt." That I found some solace in his words. Facing the storm alone seemed impossible, and having him by my side fueled something igniting deep within, a flicker of hope that I desperately needed. "But what if it's too late?" I whispered, shaken by the unyielding fears clawing at my heart. Liam turned to face me, his expression unyielding. "It's never too late to fight for those we love. Remember that. If we can bring her back from the edge, if she even has a chance to fight, we owe it to her. To all those years she's fought for us." That he was right. Aunt Millie had always been there, steady and unwavering through my storms. I could almost revel in her laughter, her warmth, her life, yet it felt so far away now. But at that moment, I could feel the strength of our memories building a bridge I could cross to her side. Her light deserved to shine, even amidst the darkness. The nurse reappeared, urgency clear in every line of her face. "We need you to remain calm and please step back for a moment. We're doing everything we can." Every word echoed through my head as I felt time slip away. I caught a glimpse of the chaos behind her, bodies moving swiftly as they fought against the desperate odds. "Just let me see her," I pleaded, my voice wavering as I pushed against the fear. "Please." The nurse shook her head gently yet firmly, embodying a force as she ushered us to stay behind. Every heartbeat echoed my worry, thrumming along with the pulse of the machines I couldn't see but felt so deeply in my bones. "Claire," Liam whispered, his voice calming amidst the turmoil, "Focus on her. Hold on to her fight. You know she wouldn't want you to fade into despair." He was right again. I felt myself pushing against the pressure of grief, forcing my heart to remember that there was still love in the air, faith to hold on to. "Aunt Millie, please," I whispered into the air, the feeble sound carrying my plea into the walls of uncertainty. "You've taught me so much. I don't want to lose what I love." Not now. Moments passed, stretching into an eternity, each tick of the clock a reminder of the possibilities that hung in the balance. I felt Liam's presence warm me, grounding me as the uncertainty rippled through the air. With each passing second, the fight surged stronger, igniting a fire deep in my heart, a yearning to cling to healthy memories, to piece together the light from the darkness. Just as hope began to sprout, the door swung open again, and a doctor emerged, his stern expression holding the weight of so many waiting hearts. "We need to talk." I braced myself, my heart racing as he began leading us aside. Would this fork in the road take me towards losing Aunt Millie or towards keeping her alive? What choices would I have to confront? "Your aunt has stabilized," he began, but cut off his own words, measuring the weight of every syllable he dispensed. "We can't predict how she might react from here, but there is a chance, if she wakes, that she'll need intensive therapy to recover from the trauma." "Thank God," I breathed, tears springing to my eyes, a waterfall of relief cascading through me. But even amidst that flicker of hope, shadows that lingered in the periphery of this blessed moment began to settle deeper in my heart. "But how bad is it?" The doctor gestured for us to sit, seriousness threading through his tone. "She has faced significant injuries leading us to recovery, but we may also need to consider the trauma, physical and mental, that may follow. I need you to prepare yourself for what's possible. It could take time." The possibility that Millie could walk away from this, reclaim her memories, offered a thread of hope, sustaining me against the uncertainty that loomed large. The truth of her pain began to parallel with the burdens I carried, and I felt the weight of it slowly shifting from individual to shared. "Of course," I nodded, feeling a swell of determination as the hours stretched thin between us. "We'll be here for her. She's never given up on us, so we won't give up on her." Liam squeezed my hand reassuringly, but I could sense the urgency that persisted behind his calm exterior. Millie would take immense strength to survive, and I realized that even if the truths surrounding Jonathan remained unspoken, this bond we forged with our aunt demanded nurturing to grow. We set up vigil outside her room, chasing away the creeping shadows of fear with each shared smile, each whispered memory. And though apprehension still lurked just beneath the surface, we anchored ourselves in the memories of love. Inside that room, amidst chaos and possibility, Millie awaited a chance to fight back into our lives, and as the minutes turned into hours, the exhaustion washed over me. I closed my eyes, a simple plea to reach Millie crossing my Minda message encased in my heart, gently whispered like the echo of a secret promise. But then, through the haze of quiet, came a sudden gasp, a sound so familiar, so painfully achingly close. I bolted upright, heart thundering against my ribcage as I spun toward the door just as it creaked open, a sliver of bright light illuminating the sterile hallway. A nurse rushed back into the room, more urgently than before. "Get the doctor," she shouted, and my heart stuttered at the weight of every word she carried. There was no more silence. Coils of tension nested into the air as I surged forward, compelled by an instinct to gather the hope that knitted us all together at this charged moment, and then I saw its gentle, tentative flutter of Aunt Millie's eyelids as they sparked into life, each blink akin to the birth of the dawn. "Claire," she muttered, the softness of her voice reaching through the chaos that surrounded us and settling into my heart. My breath caught, igniting a cascade of tears as joy and relief flooded through me, entwined together like the beating of wings. "Millie," I shouted with a fierce determination, my heart leaping as she finally focused on me. "You're here. You're with us." I dashed forward, wrapped around her hand, squeezing tighter than ever, feeling warmth resurrect from the cold grip of loss. And as the doctor rushed in, more questions arose and uncertainty sprawled in every direction. I finally realized that I had stepped beyond the abyss of fear. Now, we would fight together, facing the shadows that loomed, one heart at a time. There was still much to uncover, the truth might remain hidden, but love would persist as fierce and beautiful as the memories that propped us all up like pillars of light, and for the first time, amid the white sterile walls of that hospital, amidst everything that felt impossible, I finally understood that no matter how tangled the past could become, we're still worthy of healing, attached to what we hold dear. Even if the truth eventually unraveled us, love would forever tether us to this moment where everything changed. In that fragile heartbeat, I knew love was worth the struggle. It could reclaim all the shards scattered on the floor, stitching them back together in a mosaic of our lives. In the end, love conquers all, I murmured to myself, my heart bubbling over with newly ignited hope. Together, we wouldn't just survive. We would learn to live again. And as I cradled Aunt Millie's hand, a laughter full of promise surged within. Life and all its beautiful intricacies could redefine who we were, mending every broken part into fullness.